fact that the Chinese have come on so strong in just the last few years, where BYD surpassed Tesla as the biggest EV maker globally last quarter. We've seen China overtake Japan as the world's biggest car exporter last year.
It's an advantage for Ford being the first automaker to use this, to be able to access this network. I think it's a competitive advantage that a lot of people are going to want to actually consider when they don't want to buy a Tesla, but they want to use that charging network.
All that and more. So let's get to it. Tesla stock is down in the pre-market a little over 0.5%, sitting at $200.70 per share. I have a protective put that expires today. I believe I will be placing some zero-day option, maybe to the upside. Who knows? TSLA has a mind of its own, and trying to predict it is wrought with folly.
Here's the question then. So we've got tariffs already, 25% on Chinese EVs. You've got an extra 2.5% on imported foreign vehicles, so 27.5%. What next? Where are they going with this?
I think what we're learning is that, there's no losing in Washington right now in terms of, the race to be hawkish on China. I think it's the one thing that's sort of dividing everybody in Washington. And I do think that, the fact that the Chinese have come on so strong in just the last few years, where, BYD surpassed Tesla as the biggest EV maker globally last quarter. We've seen China overtake Japan as the world's biggest car exporter last year. I think the amount of fear both here in Europe and in the U.S. about this threat that the Chinese pose to, whether it's the U.S. car industry, Germany, France, Italy, everyone's very concerned about this and sensitive to it. And so I don't think that this will necessarily be a sort of rare occurrence in the months and years to come.
I think it's safe to say that we would hope that our legacy auto manufacturers would be where BYD is today. Problem is, BYD made a concerted effort, a shift to battery electric vehicles, plug-in hybrids, what have you. Much of this prompted by government policies. Now they're considered one of the best EV players in the game. Are their vehicles as good as Tesla? Of course not. But you can't argue the price point. Our legacy auto manufacturers' battery electric vehicles are pretty shit. And that might be okay if the price point was right. So the major difference between BYD and our legacy auto manufacturers is price. For Ford, GM, Stellantis to even come close to competing with price, tariffs included, they're going to have to become better at manufacturing these vehicles. And I know this is crazy, but for them to be better at manufacturing, they're actually going to have to do it.
But Craig, define threat. Threat to the economy, to the national champions of this sector, or seriously a threat to national security? Which one is it?
I think maybe all of the above.
You're damn right. Regardless of the threat, you won't be able to keep these vehicles from our shores for very much longer. These restrictions are hurdles now, but they'll just become speed bumps here in the future. Our legacy auto manufacturers here in the US, our startups, they need to utilize this time to become better at creating these vehicles.
Even Elon Musk, who, is never one to shy away from, talking a big game, is just in the last few weeks talking about this idea that, the Chinese are their most intense, and serious competition. And, Elon Musk talking about the idea that unless trade barriers are put up, that the Chinese will, beat up on the rest of the industry. I think, he would like to think that Tesla is, very, very much primed to compete. And I think, of course, on a global stage, Tesla is still, very, high up there in terms of leadership. But, even Ford recently, too, talked about, the amount of market share that each of these companies have at risk as a result of the fact that the Chinese are just so much better on cost and so much, out in front of the rest of the world in terms of, lowering battery prices and being able to offer EVs that are actually price competitive relative to combustion engine cars.
Tesla ain't got nothing to worry about, especially when they release that next generation vehicle for half the cost to produce. By 2030, Tesla is aiming to produce over 20 million vehicles in that year. Somebody's gonna have to supply the world with the rest of those EVs. Tesla will be just fine. Question is, will our legacy auto manufacturers, our startups here in the US, have a significant slice of that pie, or will they concede it to the Chinese?
We see China trying to make a massive inroad in Mexico. Is there a way they could circumvent what the United States has on the books now?
I think that may be a big part of why we're seeing this latest action that was formally announced this morning is basically trying to slam that back door shut. To the extent that that was potentially a path that a company like BYD was looking at as a way for them to get around tariffs on Chinese imports. Mexico, of course, has a free trade agreement where perhaps there may have been an opening there. If we see the U.S. Look at Chinese vehicles on national security grounds, it would sort of be a way to get around the fact that a company like a BYD is looking at Mexico, is building a plant in Hungary as well, and just globally really sort of setting up all over the place to move beyond just being a major player in its home market.
Oh, that's gonna be like batting a hornet's nest with a baseball bat. You better have a plan B, or you might get stung up. U.S. companies that operate heavily in China, Tesla, Apple, you name it, anybody that makes clothes or shoes, if you take this course of action, what is stopping China from implementing their own rules against American companies? This situation is insanely delicate, and that's why I keep saying you won't be able to keep these cars from our shores for very much longer. The relationship that the U.S. economy has with China has to be symbiotic. It's already on shaky ground. A collapse would be catastrophic.
China, we've seen in the past, have export controls when it comes to raw material processing technologies, which the GMs, the Stellantis, the Teslas will need if they want to make their own batteries. Do you think we could see a tit-for-tat response from China if the U.S. was to take this in a more aggressive direction?
I think that's absolutely something that the industry worries about, and we saw that sort of come to pass just in the last few months when the European Union took a look at started taking a look at China's subsidizing of its auto industry. You saw some moves on gallium and graphite and various ways that sort of on the margins China seemed to be sort of sending a message of it would be a shame if you were to crack down on us because, look at all of these ways that we control the supply chain. And if we were to turn the screws, it would make the transition all the more difficult for, the U.S. and European car makers that have really struggled with, gaining traction in this transition. Aside from Tesla, a lot of these companies outside of China have, talked a big game, but really not been able to sort of get traction with scaling up their EV and battery business, whether you want to talk about Volkswagen or General Motors or Ford. These companies set very high targets, big ambitions, but really have not hit the mark yet.
There is a world where things get much rougher before they get much better. And who knows, we might be living in that world right now. And while things can potentially get harder for every company not named Tesla, Tesla is doing everything in their power to make sure the transition for consumers is as seamless as possible.
Starting today, Ford EV owners will be able to access Tesla's Supercharger network with the use of an adapter. Yahoo Finance's Praz Sumeranian checked it out firsthand and joins us now for more. Praz.
Yeah, so a year ago, shocking news when this was announced, when Elon Musk went on Twitter Spaces with Jim Farley, and they talked about this deal. And now here we are with today's the first day you can actually use an adapter. So I went to a location in New Jersey here with a Tesla Supercharged location, and they provided a F-150 Lightning here for me to test out the process. So the actual adapter itself, and I have some video of that. It's actually made and is engineered, designed, and made by Tesla for use with this vehicle. And basically, what happens is you plug it into the Tesla charger, and now you have the ability to plug that plug into the F-150 or the Ford EV, and it immediately starts charging. There's no app. There's no I got to set up my thing. I got to type this in. I got to find the charger. No, just like for Tesla, it works seamlessly for Ford, and that's really a nice thing because once you have your account set up in the Ford Pass, it's all good. It seemed relatively easy to use. Nice heft there with that adapter. And look, it's going to make it's an advantage for Ford being the first automaker to use this, to be able to access this network. I think it's a competitive advantage that a lot of people are going to want to actually consider when they don't want to buy a Tesla, but they want to use that charging network.
Don't want to buy a Tesla? What kind of crazy person is that? No, but seriously, all EVs are welcome in the EV family. Should you want to join the Tesla family, more power to you. But baby steps, baby steps.
What about the time it will take to charge a Ford, and is it different from the time it'll take to charge a Tesla at the same station?
Same. Depending on the car's ability to basically intake a high voltage charge, and the Lightning can do that, it's just as fast as any other car.
Whatever Tesla has to do to combat the internal combustion engine sales, they're going to do it. Their mission is to transition the world to a sustainable energy economy. I want Ford to succeed. I want GM to succeed. And it's in Tesla's best interest that Ford and GM succeed as well. Remember, Tesla can't supply the entire world with their battery electric vehicles. The only market share I care about is EVs versus internal combustion engine sales. I could care less who has the largest percentage of the EV market share. How much of the total global auto sales do you have? And is that number growing? In conclusion, Chinese auto manufacturers a threat to national security? I wonder if that's how China feels about Tesla. Or Apple for that matter. Regardless of national policy, in the end, capitalism will win out. Ford, GM, Stellantis, you better be ready when it happens. And Ford now has access to the Tesla Supercharger network with an adapter. They're able to do it from their own app. Looks as seamless as if I were to do it with my own Tesla. This has to alleviate some of the concerns when it comes to range anxiety. I'm not at the Superchargers a lot, but I look forward to seeing some of those Ford Mach-E's, maybe even some of those F-150 Lightnings sitting at the charging station. I look forward to the potential conversations with those consumers. That's all I've got for you today. Be easy. Purr.